Well, praise the Lord, everyone. Pastor Roberto Bruno, pastor of the Central Apostolic Church, coming to you from my favorite place on earth, San Francisco, California. God bless you, and I hope this video finds you well. I'd been thinking for a while, just really, being a pastor of a church and knowing pastors, not only from my own denomination, but from others as well. It's an interesting position, being a pastor, yeah. And, we've heard of pastoral abuses in the sense of power struggles or power trips. Others that have, it's all about money and just, making the pastor wealthy. And, we know of, royal families, right? It's always been just something that's kind of stuck in my head. And I heard this TikToker, Lionheart Church. And the man was saying, he is talking about leaderships, and he says, many who have titles have abused their title, right? Pastor, minister, worship leader, deacon, elder, and the title has always been treated as a ranking, right? Like, I'm the pastor, so I rank the highest over everyone. There's the assistant pastor, and then the minister, and so on and so forth down the, totem pole. And the titles that we have is an office, right? It's an office of calling, an office of where we are to serve. Now, this Lionheart Church guy, he said, in the spiritual realms, titles aren't recognized. And I had never really heard that, never even paid much attention to how many times does the Bible talk about pastors or something. I've never really have done that. But he brought out a point in Acts chapter 15 and 19, when there was the evil spirit, and it had answered, the individuals that were asking, and it said, Jesus I know and Paul I know, but who are you? And the point he makes is like, he doesn't say the Apostle Paul, he doesn't say Rabbi Jesus, and we know that God is no respecter of persons, right? It sounds like a negative thing. Respecter just means everyone's equal, right? Not everyone's equal, but everyone's just kind of on the same. He's not like your grandma that or some that has favorite child or favorite. Just there's no respecter of persons, and those that of us that have titles are actually servants. So I've always taken that very seriously as a pastor, that I'm to serve the people. I have some very strong convictions about being a pastor, in the sense of, I have always tried to conduct myself to be amongst the people, right? I've never wanted to be above them. What's the old saying? A good shepherd should smell like the sheep, and so I've always taken that very seriously, and always have tried to really be a servant and not necessarily capitalize on my title, in the sense of, yes, I'm the pastor of the church, but I really push back on the people about special service, right? I should have a special parking. I should have a special seat at the table. And I know this could be unpopular. This is just totally my opinion. I'm not knocking anybody, okay? Talking from me and how I feel. And you know, and so the titles, you know, that have them are servants. You know, natural kings, right? You know, have servants that teach the children the way of the king, right? In the old days, in biblical times, you know, there's always servants and serving the families. And the idea was that they taught the children the way of the king. And as ministers, you know, we're supposed to teach the brethren the way of the king, right? I mean, not just with sermons, but of course that's a big part of it in Bible studies. A lot of the teaching is from our conduct. Because if I'm a servant, an under shepherd, then I should have some sort of connection to the king, right? And so as ministers, we're supposed to teach the brethren the ways of the king. And there are people with titles that aren't teaching the way of the king's ways. And so we have leaders who are leading in a different way. If it's just their own agendas or whatever it may be. And I think it's really lost because the people then eventually they won't follow the king because they haven't been taught of the king. So if I'm not teaching with kindness or with mercy or with grace or with forgiveness or unjudgmental eyes, or I'm not attentive to people's needs or attentive to people's situations, because I'm clearly a reflection of God, right? So I understand that people are always going to look up to it, and especially in Pentecostal circles, pastors are always looked up to, and that's fine. But the point is that if I'm being looked up to beyond my control, then as a servant, I need to serve the king and his purpose. And that purpose is to reflect the king. So if I'm power trippy, judgmental, exclusive, have my own clique, then that's not the way of the king, because I'm consumed with my own title. So we need to be servants that live and instruct about the king. And beloveds, a lot of that is our own conduct. Okay, I have met people that were dying to be ministers. They were dying to be leaders. They were dying to have these things. And, you know, with a little bit of discernment or whatever, I could discern, you know, hey, this person may not really have the call, or this person has a different agenda. Because, you know, a good leader, a good servant is going to make the job look easy. When those of us that are in the position, no, it's not easy. There's a lot that goes into it. But we need to be servants that live and instruct about the king. Now, nothing's wrong with titles, but it's an office. It's what we're called to. And it's not a ranking. That, well, I'm the pastor, so I'm above everyone. Well, I'm, you know, the bishop, so I'm the most holy out of the entire district. Well, I'm the president of the assembly, so I am at the top of ranking. Now, I understand we're a corporation and an organization, and there's rankings. We're talking about spirituality here. That's what we're talking about. And so there's nothing wrong with having titles, but to walk in the calling of it. Because ranking is who walks with God. You know, in the spirit realm, loyal to God, having humility, sacrificing for the gospel. Galatians 5, talks about the fruit of the Spirit, love and joy and peace and forbearance and goodness and faithfulness, gentleness and self-control. All of these things. These things are rankings, right? These are what we learn as we are close to the Master, that we absorb, right? That's what separates people. It's not the title. It's the connection with the God. And yes, some are called to pastor, and some are called to be missionaries. Some are called to lead worship. Some are called to win the lost on the street corner. All of these things are offices, but not ranking. Beloved, if you are serving, if you are a servant, if you have a place in leadership in your church, please don't let it go to your head. Please don't think that you're above everyone. Yeah, you may have more responsibility. Yeah, you may have more obligation. But that's the office that God has called you to. And it's to serve and not to be served. That is my feeling, and thank you for listening and allowing me to kind of unload. It's been a long video. God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend.